So, Jed, you can't tell us anything, but how much do you know the ultimate solution to the whole thing, or are you making it up as you go along?
I know a few key points. Yeah.
So, do you know who H is?
Oh yeah, I know that.
But you could change it though, couldn't you? That's part of the beauty. Or would you change it?
Yeah, I suppose if I had a better idea later on that was even better, then yeah, of course I would change it, because you want it to be as good as possible and surprising and so forth.
And I should explain that we'll talk for a bit, show these exclusive clips and one previous clip, and then we'll open it up to the audience. There are 2 microphones out there, and then you can ask whatever you want except who H is. Well, you can ask, but you won't get an answer. And so we're in the third part of Series 5 tomorrow, and 6 is already commissioned. We've talked about this before, Jed, you and I, in various forums. You have always said that if you were only commissioned 1 series ahead, you would close down the series. So unless you get Series 7 after this, then Series 6 would be the last.
Yeah, and the only reason for that is that there are a lot of loose ends to tie up. So the thing we couldn't do is take the risk of getting a commission later on, which then allowed us to continue. So if we didn't know that we could go beyond the next series, then we would have to approach it in a way that concluded things.
And the reason behind that is that there are many examples in television of series that have been suddenly decommissioned. It's a photographer, not a walkout, don't worry. There are series that have suddenly been decommissioned and then have left loose ends to the fury of audience members and the fury indeed of the creators.
Yeah, and the problem there is the broadcasters. The broadcasters sometimes make those decisions that run counter to serving the audience. So series that have invested quite a lot in terms of building stories and have developed a following, often when they are cancelled for whatever reason, and sometimes the reasons are pretty spurious, they come to an end. So we have a very good relationship with the BBC, and that's why we have this ongoing dialogue with them. But it is up to them. It's at the moment we're very happy working on the series, and we do want to carry on. So the final decision does lie with the broadcaster.
And we'll talk to the actors. We're going to show some clips in a moment. But just give us a sense of how much you know at the start. So we'll talk about your specific case in a moment. So don't do it now. But Rochenda, who was introduced this series, how many scripts do you get at the beginning?
So to begin with, we were given 4, and then Jed kindly releases episode 5. And we're all kind of like desperately reading it on set. And 6, I believe, is left slightly open and gets released later on. So after 5, so it's all a surprise.
Well, and it could be a very nasty surprise, because with Jed's reputation as a TV serial killer now so well established, Adrian Dunbar, who I interviewed recently for Radio Times, told me that if you suddenly have a lot to do in an episode, you get frightened because you think
everybody's like reading them like that.
So it's counterintuitive for actors, because you really want to be in lots of scenes, but if you are, you know it might be the end. Go out with the bang. Yeah. So tell us. Yes. So you the point of this is that you don't know. Thank you. You don't know where your character is going.
Well, I do, obviously, but yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a surprise. She's come back. She's a senior legal counsel. She sort of went off with her tail between her legs in series 3, and now she's back. And you'll just have to find out what happened. Yeah. No, she's just doing a good job. She's a supreme lawyer, so what can I say?
An unresolved sexual tension.
I think that's an undercurrent, yeah. I think is that right, Jed? Is that, or have I misinterpreted the scenes? I think it's
No, I think that anyone who remembers series 3, there was kind of
A kiss, yeah.
I was going to say frisson, but, yeah, there was something going on there, and you know, what we've established so far in series 5 is that Hastings' marriage is very much on the rocks, and let's wait and see how that relationship develops.
Yeah.
He's not that interested in women, though. It's all about finding bent coppers, isn't it? Really?
Well, yeah, maybe that's a subplot there. Now the actors tell us, thank you. The actors, if you just tell us what Jed, just don't listen for a moment, about what Jed's like if you ask him questions about characters or plot lines. Is he evasive with you in the same way he is with the audience?
We talk really openly, I would definitely say, yeah. No,
It's helpful.
Yeah,
Really helpful. Really
yeah,
helpful.
perfect word.
Yeah, because it's not an easy script. You know, it's pretty complex, and you do need that sort of interaction with Jed.
Yeah, and when you need to
definitely.
clarify kind of motivations
Yeah.
for things, you can just ask Jed. He's very helpful with that.
Yeah.
And he knows it better than anyone. So you go to the horse.
Yeah, I mean, say for example with Maya, with Maneet, when we were doing series 4, we had a conversation just between the two of us about what was motivating her giving secrets to Hilton. So Maya knew all that stuff before we even got into series 5.
But also, Jed, while you've got the microphone, because Adrian Dunbar, as you know, is putting his around in interviews, he claims that you turned up on set at the end of the of series 4 and said, "Can you do a couple of shifty looks?" And is that actually true?
No, it wasn't at all. No, maybe that's how it kind of came over to him. But actually, all that was scripted, and I was in the edit, and I just didn't think we had the shots. So I went on the set the next day and had some time with the director and talked about how I thought we could achieve what we needed to achieve from the script, and that then led to some additional shooting and some reshooting that I felt took us to the right place. I think probably what Adrian means is that the prominence of that was much greater in the final cut because it wasn't originally scripted to be the last moment. But when we got into the edit, it very clearly was the strongest out. So there was meant to be more action after that in the final wrap up that we do at the end with the subtitles. But we reordered that so that it ended with Hastings.
And again, for the actors, before we show the first clip, I mean, I understand it's clearly one of the things that actors do is concealing who their characters are, what their characters are feeling. But it is extreme in this, because what Jed does, the layers, that you could have a gangster pretending to be a band copper, pretending to be a gangster, pretending to be, and so on.
Yeah.
So just talking about it, so in acting terms, presumably you play what they want to come across as in that scene.
I think, yeah, you play the moment, you play the truth of that scene, of what's written down in that. I think you don't think about anything that you're hiding. I think you play the truth. I do anyway. I play
That's
the
not
truth
for
of
us
that.
to do.
Yeah.
I think that's for the story and the script and, you know,
Yeah.
and then the twist and thing. We just have to absolutely play the truth of that moment, sell that moment,
Yeah.
and then
Exactly.
the work can be done elsewhere.
Except that there are slight variations. I mean, those looks we talked about. I mean, sometimes the character will show a certain amount of tension, as Adrian does at the end of 4, and indeed the beginning of 5. So again, that's being in the moment. There are moments where they do give away bits for us.
And it also depends how you read it, though, as an
Yeah.
audience member. So a dodgy look from Adrian could be him thinking about what he's going to have for lunch. So, you know, you don't know. It's how you interpret that look, isn't it? And it's what you're looking for as an audience member, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's layers, and it's just, and you know, you just have to be as subtle as you can be.
Okay, well, the first of our 3 clips, and this is exclusive from tomorrow night's episode. It's a scene involving Rochenda, and then we'll talk to her a bit about joining the cast. So if we could play the first clip, please. So that's Rochenda Sandall, as you know from the series, introduced as a character in this series. So Stephen Graham has been open that he was, as a megastar of his standing, he was just offered the role.
Yeah.
But although you're now a megastar, you weren't at the time. So presumably it was done differently. You had to audition.
Yeah. Yeah. I was offered the part straight out like Stephen, but yeah, it was just 2 auditions that I did for the part. Yeah.
And what this word "sides" they use in the business, which is bits of script. What do you remember? What you did at the audition? What scene?
Oh, yeah, I do remember. But I can't really tell you.
And you can't because
yeah, sorry.
It's the one where you reveal your real name as Helen. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, it's top secret auditions now.
So the 2 auditions. So first of all, you do it for casting agent and director.
Yes, and then we get the opportunity.
And then they say Mr. Big is coming in.
Yeah. You're going to meet Jed. Well done. Yeah.
So Jed, it's clearly a large part of being a showrunner, working in TV. So just talk to us a little bit about casting. What you're in some cases you've seen a lot of work by the actor, in other cases you haven't. So just tell us what it is you're looking for in an audition.
I'm in a very fortunate position as a writer that I get to be across casting, and I'm part of the decision-making process about which actors we bring into the show. So yeah, I think that it's different depending on the part, clearly, but what we have established in the series is a certain kind of acting style, and so someone whose style is very different from that probably wouldn't be a good fit. And then also, it's just the kind of social realism and naturalism piece. You know, we're trying to depict a certain side of life. So generally, actors who have that naturalism and that ability to just convey quite complex things in quite a small way. You know, it's not theatrical in the sense of the big performances. It's much smaller. It's much more focused. And the important thing is that they're believable. You know, that you start to develop that kind of perception of an actor during the audition process, whether you actually believe they could be the person that they're pretending, which is what acting is. They're pretending to be.
There's another factor, presumably. You film in Belfast, it takes 4 months, it's a major character. Jed, you're presumably also thinking, I don't know if it's ever articulated, but could we bear to spend 4 months in Belfast with this person? Does that come up?
Yeah, but again, you know, we have a certain kind of happy unit, and you know, if you heard that someone was a pain, then you really would think twice about casting them. And it you know, we've all had that experience of working on a show where there's someone tricky, and you just don't need it. So we've got a lovely regular cast who all get on very well, and we create, I think, a very calm and professional but fun atmosphere. And so you want someone who's going to add to that. If someone's going to be a pain, then well, they're going to be fired. So you know, we may as well just not have them there in the first place.
And Rochenda, for you, is that ever a factor? And obviously, it's a great job to be offered, but the fact that you've got to leave the cat and be away from home all week, that's just something it's like being on tour in the theatre, it's just something you have to accept.
Yeah, very much so, but I mean, this is really a job of a lifetime, so I was more than happy to spend the time over there doing it forever. And you can kind of come back with the kind of scheduling, you can come back home and see the dog or cat or whatever in between anyway. So, yeah, but it's a joy to be at work and to be working with such a fantastic team and such a fantastic group of actors.
For the 3 of you on that, because it's slightly unusual in that it's such an established hit. The 3 main actors have been there throughout, and you've been there before as well. So it sort of feels, for a non-actor, like joining the 4th year at school or whatever, where they all know each other. and then you're the new person. That is an adjustment you have to make.
I had an amazing. It's like Vicky, Martin, Adrian, and Craig was there at the time. Just went like that, and just come into the family.
Yeah.
And then it's like the first day I think I was there. Jed was like, "Oh, we're going out for dinner," or this. People inviting you to sort of be sociable with them, and just hanging out with you and chatting in between. And immediately I felt like part of the family, and it was lovely because that was the scariest job I've ever walked onto because I loved the show so much that I think you
that
the same.
yeah.
And it ended up it's just been the most for me. I've had 3 series of pure joy with those people, and I've made some friends for life in the crew and cast, and it's just it's so not what it looks like. It's this really dark, gritty sort of procedural drama, and actually it's like a comedy behind the scenes.
And they set the tone, the 3 guys set
They
the
really
tone,
do,
and
yeah.
they lead by
Very much so.
example, and they're amazing actors, and they're lovely people. Adrian especially is the sort of father figure of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But also because it's Belfast, it's his home territory, isn't it? So,
Yeah, he's a Northern Irish
Yeah.
boy, so yeah. But it's a privilege.
And when Adrian starts singing on set, it's a beautiful moment.
What does he, is this during takes? No, we don't. That's right. It's going to be a musical in the 6th episode. Yeah.
Oh, did you not know that's what Series 6 was?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
Line of Duty, the musical.
The musical,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. And I'm coming back from the dead because I want to be part of that.
Ghost, yeah. Line of Duty, Ghost, the musical, yeah. How fantastic. What does he sing?
Oh, what was it? What sort of style is it?
He sings folk, doesn't he? A lot of folk music.
He's got an amazing
Yeah.
voice. Did you hear him on Jonathan Ross?
Yeah.
Yeah, like that type of
Yeah.
music is his.
Yeah.
Well, we're now moving towards the second clip, and Maya says that she's had 3 great series, but it's going to be in the past tense now, unfortunately. But we'll talk to her about her final moments of the series and her feelings towards the showrunner who's so clearly written her out. So if we could see clip 2, please. Maya, all the actors, including the main 3, they talk in interviews, I've done several of them, about the trepidation of opening a script and not knowing if you're going to be in it or if you won't be in it after episode 2. But let us know how it works. It isn't literally that they email it and you think, I'm not in this very much, and then you see she dies. So you did know.
I did know because Jed rang me before the scripts were coming out, and way before actually we had a conversation, didn't we? But before that, I'd also suggested it, hadn't I? About why don't you kill me? And I'm like, really? Not many actors asked to die. No. But I think it was so unexpected, and it's brilliant. But yeah, I did know, and Jed said, you'll have lots to do in the first episode, which would be great, and and it will be.
Which proves what Adrian says: if you have lots to do, you're in.
Except
you're in trouble.
I knew.
Yeah.
And actually, I even though I loved the show and everything, what a way to go. I would much rather have gone like that than just sort of been hanging around being dodgy or not dodgy in the background. And if that storyline had never been resolved, I think people would have felt very unsatisfied with that character. And I didn't realise that she was very sort of well thought of until Twitter sort of went into meltdown after the first episode. I mean, my phone was overheating with the tweets of, oh my goodness, wasn't expecting that. People were heartbroken. You made me cry. I was crying. I was shouting at them. And then I had a lot of people not wanting to believe it. She's not really dead. It's Jed. She won't be really dead. I'm like, I'm not sure how many people get their throat slit and survive. But it is Jed. So who knows?
But also, Jed in a previous life was a hospital doctor, emergency doctor, so he could know how to save someone with a slit throat. Maybe he does. No, I'm sure.
I don't think he was that good a doctor.
No, I think.
I certainly think leaving them down by the harbour overnight isn't it?
But that's fascinating. So why did you offer to die?
What I love about Line of Duty is those amazing moments that you don't expect. Jessica Raines being thrown out the window, Danny Mays being killed in the first episode of the series. Those moments are, for me, what the show is and why I loved it as a viewer before I went into it. So I wanted to be part of one of those moments, and I think that it was so clever of Jed to do it the way he did it, because you just absolutely wouldn't have expected that of that character, I don't think.
And Jed, we all talk about this because this is your signature now, and but what you've done, there used to be a quite simple trust, an almost bored one between the audience and the drama, that if it was a big star, they would be there till the end of it, and they could go on for endless series. But you can't trust anything now. And you might refer to that, but Keely Hawes, it was widely said, even after Radio Times had put on the front cover, slightly controversially, that she was dead. People still saying, of course she's not dead, no, she'll come. But was this something you set out to do, to break that contract?
It was more about serving the thriller, and one of the things that maybe I perceived in watching drama myself was the feeling that if it was the regular characters, it was the stars in a particular setting, there was always a sense that the jeopardy wasn't real. Well, of course they're going to get out of it. Of course they're going to be saved at the 11th hour, and you only have to do it a couple of times in a series, and then that's removed. So it means that we can put our characters in jeopardy and save them at the 11th hour, but the audience perceives the jeopardy as real because they've seen a couple of moments where it didn't go so well for the characters.
And it's fascinating what Maya says about offering to go, because there is a perception on Twitter and the media that you are this serial killer who just picks on an actor every so often and rings them up and says, you can go on a lot of long holidays next year because you won't be required. But presumably there must have been actors who didn't want to be ripped out.
Well, firstly, I think any perception on Twitter can't really be put forward as being accurate,
you know what it is, that you are making ruthless decisions, but in fact, as we've just discovered, it's more complicated.
It's much more of a collaboration than that, and in the specific example that we're discussing here, Maya and I were at lunch, and she said she wanted to die.
I'm never drinking red wine in the day.
And so then it was just, and then we had a conversation about what kind of story that might be, and then, once the story had developed a little bit in my thoughts, I went back to Maya and we talked about it. If she'd done a big boo-hoo and whatever, it would have been different maybe. But actually, Maya was great. She identified how important it was for her character to have that kind of storyline, and one of the best solutions was the one that we came up with. So yeah, it's obviously when people have been part of the series, and I think most people on the show really enjoy being part of the show. It's a shame, obviously, to leave that behind, but they can always come back and visit.
As a ghost, yeah.
No, they can just come back.
And Maya, as you said there, if you are going to go, rather than being transferred to AC 26 or something and just walking out of the door and having a bit of a party, you've got to go like that, haven't you?
Yeah, with your throat being slashed and left for dead on a jetty. My mum found that very difficult to watch. One of the fun things about being an actor is to do stuff like that and have a bloke underneath a jetty when you're lying there pumping blood. So it feels like you've wet yourself when this blood's all just coming out and you're like, oh, this is a bit weird, but really, it's going to look amazing. And yeah, just that it could have been. I think it could have been even more graphic, couldn't it? But, BBC lawyers and all that, how boring.
So after 3 series, though, is it emotional? Was it emotional to do the last scene?
Oh, all those tears were real. Partly because of what that character was going through, that kind of being completely torn, feeling, and when Daddy Hastings is in front of you saying you've let me down, you've let us all down, these people, these are your family and they're sticking up for you, but you've let us all down. You don't even need, there's no acting required, it's just
But actually the last scene we shot with you was one of the dullest, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just like,
you answering the phone.
It was me in the background doing Maneet stuff,
Yeah. And that was the last one, but we kind of surprised you with that one.
They did.
And the clip we saw there is one of the interrogation scenes, which have again become a signature of the series. And again, the other actors have talked to me and lots of others about this. They're now so important to the viewers and to the show that they are a big deal to do.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to nod because you don't know if you've got one yet.
They're very complex. And having sat in one with amazing, what is George? Is it George? I can't remember his surname. Oh, he played the paedophile guy. Costigan, that's it. George Costigan and Adrian Dunbar, but in series 3, I think it was. I sat in that interview scene and I just watched this masterclass in acting between these two, and it was like we did that scene all day, and I think it was the last day of that shoot of that series, so we had the wrap party in the evening, and just what those two actors played off each other, how amazing they were. I was sat there just, you know, sort of fiddling with my papers at the desk, doing Maneet things, thinking, this is incredible. And then, you know, to get your own interrogation scene, that's great.
But also because Martin Constant, he's been on both sides of the interrogation table, and you have, and then Doc Cotton was as well. But Martin Constant said it's much easier to be on the other side of the table because you're always answering questions. It's easier than having to remember what comes next. Did you find that?
I've never had to ask the questions.
I know,
because I'm not that important. But what they do, I mean, Jed writes them some really huge dialogue scenes, and they're so wordy, and the way that they deliver, I think
you don't say wordy to writers. You say you say complex and
convoluted.
You say that,
But I think they do incredibly, don't they? All three of them, they have it, and it's. You just believe that they're police officers.
It's so good to watch, and all the art department work alongside it as well is great, with the kind of like the television screens and the tablets and the papers, and you can kind of see everybody in the bar at night kind of learning the order of the papers, and so it's like really it is like watching a masterclass in it. If you get the chance to.
And Jed, we talked about one thing you changed, which is the contract between the audience and the show in terms of people's life. Also the length of the scene, because I mean this also applies to Bodyguard, where in that opening scene is 20 minutes or so. Some of the interrogation scenes are 20 minutes. Now it's accepted now, but when you started that, there was a convention that scenes were very, very short in TV. I mean, that is something you've resisted.
I think it's fair to say it's the convention. I mean, I think you can go back and find examples of very long scenes, back to Smiley's People and things like that. But it was something that sort of developed as we were going through Series 1 and into Series 2. Just the complexity of the procedure that we are really helped by our police advisors, and one of the things I don't want to do in the show is have shortcuts in terms of procedure. So they kind of give us chapter and verse about how you go through it, and when you actually have to go through it in the way that real police officers do, it just ends up taking time. So in the end, it was a decision about trying to be as authentic as possible, and obviously it's a TV show, so it's not 100% authentic, but we do our best to get as near to it as we possibly can.
Adrian and Martin have said something which interesting to me about that, which was that their pride as actors is that they've learned all this stuff, and that they don't want to look down at the notes. But of course, a real police officer couldn't possibly remember whole statements and whole details, and they have to get it right. So you have to do a certain amount of looking down. I mean, they're not reading it off real notes, but you have to look as if you are.
I think it depends on the actors. They use different techniques. Sometimes they deliberately don't learn sections that they read, and they read them live. The person who has the problem is Adrian, because he wears reading glasses and his character doesn't. And he's too vain to wear them. It's kind of like, I'm saying, Captain Kirk wore them in Search for Spock or Rapid Khan. Just bung them on, but so
he has to learn all of it because he can't read the paper.
He does, but they kind of have prompts. So he maybe certain keywords they will look down at. So that they're not going to remember every single date and every single designation of a piece of evidence, because the police officer wouldn't. So they have those things down there, so that they kind of function as a memoir during the scene, and also that helps them develop a certain kind of authenticity in the way it's delivered.
But also, Jed, they are doing those scenes over and over again on the filming day. The interrogation scenes, because of the angles.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean that applies to any kind of filming. But yeah, in what is particularly challenging about this is that usually we have 3 cameras turning over during an interview scene, and we do hold takes. So if the scene is 20 minutes long, then we will shoot for 20 minutes, and the actors have to know 20 minutes of dialogue. So it's an enormous challenge, and we're so blessed with these fantastic, dedicated actors who just learn it. They just learn something that's almost a one-act play, and they come into work, and they've been kind of absent from the pub and curry house for a couple of weeks before, and then they do the scene, and hey, we're all out on the town again. It's like that, but it's amazing what they achieve.
Well, just before we open up to the audience, we'll play the third clip in, and we'll talk to Polly about who is Gill and what is her role in all this, in as much as she's allowed to say. So could we see the third clip, please? So, Polly, so far we've talked to Rochenda about coming into the series, and Maya about going out. And this is a sort of third category where you've been a minor character but now becoming an apparently, possibly more major one. So just talk us through the conversations with
I just heard a rumour that maybe something was afoot from the casting director, and then I got would I come in and meet Jed and talk about it, and was I interested in coming back? And of course I definitely was, and it was such an amazing thing, and I was thrilled. Yeah, so we had a chat, and I came out and got on with it.
And presumably for this series, you have to know a lot more about the character than you did for the previous ones.
Well, I think you invent your own stories in your head, and a background story, but you play. Well, I certainly do. Is to play what's on the page and what my objective is in that particular moment. It would be impossible to carry everything with you. You have to play the moment, and so yeah. I mean, I have my own theories about Gill and what her problems are, but yeah.
But because these are things that are talked about in drama schools and actors talk about it, which are in the moment and active. But this is interesting to people who are not actors. But what it is, it's that thing. What does my character want in this scene, or doesn't want?
Yeah, you when you're learning, you sort of break it down like that, and objectives and obstacles, but that then becomes very sort of technical, and that's not interesting to watch. So I think I certainly just jump in. You have to make believe, you have to play, and I think that's what being in the moment is. You just try to believe every word you're saying, and that you are Gill Biggeloe, and Ted is Ted. And you're a lawyer, and that's enough. The camera will do the rest.
This thing about being in the moment, and it's more likely in a long-running series. But the thing Woody Allen did once, where he only, well, I think he still does it. He only gives the actors the scenes they're in, because he said that often actors will play the end. And he once didn't want the actress to know she was playing someone who died.
I think Jed's a bit Woody Allen-ish. You don't get. You have no idea. I have no idea. I still don't, as to what happens to Gill. So.
But you must know which scenes you've recorded.
Yes. Of course I do. But what I'm saying is, I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's always necessary to know where you're ending up. I don't.
But Jed, can we give Jed the microphone? He's got it there. That is again something you can do in a returning series. There are actors who, I think it's less common now, but would play the end. They wanted to know where their character got to and where they were heading for. But in this, they simply can't, because only you know the end, and you may not know.
Well, it depends what you mean by the end. If you're just talking about the strand that an actor's involved in, if I know, I'll just say. I mean, I don't see the point of hiding things. I think that, when you're dealing with professional actors, the more information you give them, the better a job they can do. And I'm certainly not from the school of treating actors like they're not part of the process and part of the collaboration. So often those conversations are really beneficial, because it leads to further thoughts about what the character's arc is, and the actor is responsible for that particular character. So we often have discussions about it, and that is then fed into the script. So that happens all the time. If I honestly don't know, if it's something that's far ahead, then I'll just say I don't know, but these are the possibilities. But generally, when we're within a series, then the overall arc is something that we're all aware of, and that is something that exists maybe before the scripts have been issued. So the only reason that the later scripts aren't issued is because they're going through a whole kind of process, which isn't necessarily to do with the story. It's in terms of getting the locations and getting all the casting done and all those things. So we want to issue things that are shooting scripts. But if anybody wants to talk about things that affect their performance, then I'm always around, and so we just talk about them.
But Jill's a good example of the thing I started with, about to open it up to the audience, about how much you know about the whole series, or knew when you started. So there's a specific example which you can talk about, as it did in the past. Did you know that Gill was going to become a bigger thing in series 5, or was that something that came to you when working on series 5?
I think it's part of the permutations that are always there. So in the way that Paul Higgins came back and Polly's come back, they're part of the world of the series. So it's just something that's available to us when we start thinking about the detail of the story. And if there's been a character in the past who can fulfill that role, then it's kind of interesting to use that particular character again for a number of reasons. One is it's great bringing back people who know the show, because if they say yes straight away. So Polly and I met, we chatted for about half an hour. At the end she said yeah, and I thought, oh, that's great. We don't have to do like 3 bloody days of casting to try and find someone else. We've actually got someone here who's great, absolutely right for the role, and is going to fit in well with the show. So that's all part of it, and obviously at the end of a series, when we've got all our characters left over, the ones who are still standing, they're the ones who you think, well, they may have a role in the future that is yet to be determined, and there are others where we've already started to think that they've definitely got a role in the next season.
But also in the structure of it, in thriller terms, backstory is so important in this, and we know that it's a vast, or we suspect, it's a vast web that goes across all the series. So if Polly's character had been a totally new one, we don't get that. I mean, it expands the web.
Yeah, well, I like story to take place in the present. I find it quite alienating at times when you have a drama where it starts off and everybody's talking about something that happened in the past, and it just seems to all revolve around that, like watching a play. So actually, if you witness these events, then you're more immersed in them and you're more carried forward with them. So we have this fantastic canvas and this opportunity, which we're so lucky to have, which is that the audience can experience Series 3, and then they can watch Series 4, and then Series 5 is on. So it's like they've experienced the backstory that the character has, and that's just great. And it's all part of this incredibly privileged and fortunate relationship we have with our loyal fans.
And just before we do it, on the H's, you're not going to tell us who it is, obviously, but unless you want to, then you can. But I remember being asked by Radio Times to write a piece. is H Hastings or Hilton? And I just checked, and I went back through and I mean there are about 28 H's in fact. Did you knew you were doing that always? Did you?
There aren't 28 more.
No, but there are quite a lot.
It's about 6, aren't there?
Yeah. But that was
just clarify that.
Yeah, 6.
Yeah.
But that was. Did you always know you were planting that across the?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes there were characters whose name could be corrupted or nicknamed into being an H as well, if I wanted to. So some of the characters were given names where they could end up being revealed as having an H connection if it was required.
I'll just try this out. I think it's the Duke of Edinburgh. I think it's HRH, in fact. That he's known as H to his friends. You're looking shifty again. Yeah. So do you, last one before I open this up, the actors, did you speculate on set about who is H, how it all comes together in the end?
Yeah, everybody's got their own kind of theory. Yeah.
Do you want to give us your pet theory?
Absolutely not.
But they can't do anything to you, Maya, now, because you've gone. So you could, go for it.
Well, one thing you might not have known about Maneet is she's called Maneet H. Bindra. Just saying.
Okay, if we could bring the lights up, and then we'll take as many questions as we possibly can.
Yes, that is correct. That was something that was commissioned quite a long time ago. So we knew before Series 5. So after Series 4 went out, we already had Series 5 commissioned, which had been commissioned after Series 3. So we knew we had 4 and 5. And then we got 6 commissioned. So we're in that same situation now, which is once Series 5 has finished airing, we'll have a conversation with the BBC with a view to whether there's a possibility of Series 7 being commissioned. I think that there are different degrees of resolution, and when you have a returning series, that what you're aiming to do is to resolve certain things, but create an interesting direction that comes out of that new information. So, irrespective of whether something gets resolved or not, what you're trying to achieve is that it gives you forward momentum into finding out something different, or re-examining the assumptions that have gone into something. And that's something that we've done all the way through. So it's only really when we knew we were completely finishing that we would try and achieve a higher degree of resolution than that.
Me.
Yeah, it's Maya. I think I feel about all of them the same way, which is that they all became significant characters in all kinds of ways, and that's what made their ending as powerful as they were, and so it's hard to single anyone out. They all kind of fulfilled very different functions within the series, and at the time those characters like Maneet or Lindsay Denton or Doc Cotton, they were kind of unique forces within the series. So I kind of have that view of quite a lot of them.
Just to turn that around slightly, in writing one of the later series, have you ever thought, I wish I hadn't killed off someone, because they'd be quite handy at this point to be dragged into the interrogation room?
I don't think you can really think that way. I think if you kind of think that way, then it ends up stopping you doing the things that you need to do in the present. And one of our philosophies on the series is that and this isn't just at series level, it's at episode level, you have to do the thing that makes it the best possible episode. And that's why I think all of us who work on the series, one of the things that we take a lot of pride in is the consistency of the episodes. That we endeavour to make them consistently interesting and compulsive viewing. What we don't do is think, we can do a kind of episode that's much slower paced, much more reflective, because we've got something great next week. Our philosophy is that the story is very immediate and constantly changing. So I think it would actually affect the overall philosophy if we allowed ourselves to think that way.
The whole baddie thing. See, it's hard because I love Danny Mays' character. I think he's an incredible actor, but I also thought that character was so complex because of what he'd been through and then what he did. And for me, like, I mean, I've got so many favourites, but I think he's kind of like a standout person for me, who I just loved that character, that performance, everything about that storyline and everything.
And Jed, just on that, because it's again an example of how you've changed the narrative for these things, the fact that we would even so vividly remember that Danny Mays character, given that he was in it so briefly, but that's a combination of you and him, it's because it's such an astounding scene, that interrogation scene.
Yeah, and again, you know, we're really so grateful to have actors of that quality doing those roles, and I would say that I don't really consider them baddies. That what we in the show we actually call people who fulfil that specific role the antagonist, because what we're trying to avoid is whether they're good or bad. We're saying that like a lot of people who do very challenging jobs, they sometimes do bad things and they sometimes do good things, and the way the series works is that it tries to devise characters who are allegedly corrupt police officers who have quite complex motivations, some of which the audience can regard as ethical and some of which they don't regard as ethical. And that's obviously generally quite different from real police corruption, which is generally motivated by greed. So our characters are very deliberately designed not to be goodies or baddies.
And Greek dramas had a protagonist, antagonist, so who is the protagonist in Line of Duty? Is it Hastings?
Well, there's it's an ensemble, so the protagonists are the AC-12 characters, and the antagonist is the person who in each series they're investigating.
But one of AC-12 could turn out to be an antagonist.
No, I just said that they're protagonists.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. There are many, many more questions we could ask, but they're kicking us out of here. Thank you very much to all of the panel and to all of you.